So to keep the momentum going, so we have next up Dr. Sidra Montgomery. She's a sociologist who leads studies on women in the military, gender integration, sexual assault in the military families, and veterans. She's currently a senior researcher with AG Associates and was recently on NPR discussing gender integration of the Marine Corps recruit training. So welcome.
Excellent. Thank you so much, and good morning. Thank you to the Valkyrie Project for having me and for MIT Lincoln Labs for hosting us. I'm so excited to be here and to get to be in conversation with all of you for the next 2 days. So today I want to provide a brief high-level overview of policy related to women in the military, which is actually going to build really nicely off of Joan's talk, kind of grounding us in some of the domestic recent progress and where we have yet to go. And my hope is really to provide a foundation that we can build upon at the panel at 10 and then throughout the rest of our time here. Next slide, please. So first, let me briefly tell you about myself and the work that I do. I'm a sociologist and a researcher. I love to use the tools of research to bring clarity to complex problems and issues so that leaders and policymakers can make better decisions. I'm primarily a qualitative researcher, which means that I start at the ground level with people. I want to understand your experiences and your perspectives and how that informs your actions so that I can start to build the puzzle pieces of how social groups and organizations and institutions function. I've studied many different personnel and quality of life issues for service members, veterans, and their families, but my foray into women in the military was as a research contractor for DACOITS, the Defense Advisory Committee on Women in the Services. And it's through my work with the committee over the past 5 years that I grew my passion and dedication for making things better for women in the military. I was also the lead social scientist on a recent study for the Marine Corps on gender integration at recruit training. I got to spend 6 weeks observing Marine Corps recruit training at both MCRDs, visited recruit training at other services, conducted interviews and focus groups with hundreds of personnel, and ultimately crafted recommendations to the Marine Corps for how they can increase gender integration at recruit training. To date, this has been the most professionally and personally rewarding work of my life, so please come find me later if you're interested in our study or our findings, because I absolutely love to talk about it. Other highlights of my career include research for the DoD Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Office, the Department of Veterans Affairs, as well as other federal agencies that have touch points with military and veteran populations, such as the Department of Labor and the Small Business Administration. So to start, I want to bring you into both the task and the promise of sociology to help make you mini sociologists, because this will help us to think about the military institution, including the challenges and the opportunities that we're facing today. C. Wright Mills was a foundational American sociologist who articulated the sociological imagination, which is the lens in which you can come to understand and look at society. Next slide. He described it is the political task of the social scientist to continually translate personal troubles into public issues and public issues into the terms of their human meaning. And I love this quote so much because it describes how sociology seeks to understand these broader structures like the institution of the military with the everyday experiences of individuals, in this case service members, and vice versa. And so this is where we can see the issues that you face as women who have served or are serving represent these broader structural issues that are occurring in the military. And there's no better example of this than the work that's coming from the women's initiative teams, where they use collective action to identify and elevate struggles and issues that individuals and groups of service women are facing, ultimately working to help update and eradicate these systemic barriers. And I know that we all know and understand the context of the military, but I want to take a moment to explicitly ground us in a couple important contours of this institution. The military was made by men for men, right? This is a historical fact and something that we know continues to affect the institution today. It's impacted everything within the institution, the structure, the culture, the social norms. We've all inherited this institution as it was. These are the ingredients of the cake. It's the structure and environment that's interwoven within the institutional fabric. But now, as society has changed and evolved and we're becoming more diverse, we want the cake to be gluten-free. And altering the recipe when it's baking is going to take a lot of work. So another structural challenge is that the military grows its own leaders. So that means that the senior leaders of today entered 30 years ago. So they were molded and formed, and their current career trajectories were influenced by the policies of the 1990s. And so using this context and groundwork, I want to briefly walk through 3 ways that I've categorized recent progress and future potential for policy issues related to women in the military. Next slide. When I think about the last several years and our future directions, updating antiquated policies comes top of mind. Some recent policy improvements in this area include updated hair and grooming standards for women, particularly taking into account women of color so as not to make them take actions to conform their hair to white texture standards and expectations. New policies and regulations for women while flying pregnant in the Air Force. The Cadet Act, which updated single-parent policies for students at the military service academies so they don't have to make painful decisions between temporarily giving up their child or continuing their service and education. Expanded postpartum exemptions for physical fitness tests, updates to uniform items, including maternity uniforms, as well as the Space Force's debut of the first military uniforms ever to be designed on a woman's body first. Policies surrounding sexual assault that remove key elements from the chain of command and into the hands of prosecutors and others who are experts and have more impartiality. Of course, despite a lot of recent progress, there are still areas for improvement in antiquated policies, and many of you know this because you experience it in your day-to-day lives. While some work has been done to improve body fat and composition standards, I believe that more needs to be done to truly take into account women's bodies and their physiology while incorporating current science and understandings of contemporary bodies. Also, many services need to revisit and update policies for training programs in schools, particularly related to pregnancy, postpartum, and other requirements for selection and attendance, such as strict timeframes for the last physical fitness test on record. The second broad area that I've categorized as I look at the landscape of policy is ensuring parity in both opportunities and policies for women in the military. Next slide. This means ensuring policies and opportunities are equal for men and women uniform. Some recent progress in the last several years includes research and changes to the promotion board process, including removing photos and gender identifiers as much as possible. The expansion of parental leave policies, including parity for secondary caregivers, which primarily affects male service members, increased options for designating who's the primary and secondary caregiver, and also greater flexibilities for service members to use their parental leave in the way that works best for them. Recruitment and marketing materials with better, more holistic representations of women. The full implementation of opening all MOS and career fields to women following the lifting of the combat exclusion rule. And ensuring that women have access, no matter where they live, to reproductive health care and services. But there are still areas that need addressing, such as gender integration of Marine Corps drill instructor teams at recruit training. The Marine Corps is the only service where women and men are assigned to train recruits based on their gender. Female drill instructors train platoons of female recruits, and male drill instructors train platoons of male recruits. One consequence of this is that it can make it harder for female drill instructors to gain that training experience and those cycle reps and become a senior drill instructor during their tour because they are constrained in their staffing and assignments throughout the depots because it's allocated by gender. While not explicitly a policy issue, discrimination and gender bias greatly affects the experience and working lives of women in the military. As we've seen in society, it's shifted from primarily overt forms of sexism to covert sexism, the kind that's both harder to identify and rectify. Many women have a different experience in the military than their male counterparts because they encounter sexism and gender bias. Another policy area where we see differences by gender are the selective service requirements. There are many things that we could debate here, but women of certain ages are not required to sign up for selective service the way that their male counterparts are. The third area where I feel the military has the most and the most difficult work to do is addressing and designing equity. Next slide. This is going beyond ensuring equal or the same policies, but employing an understanding of and creating policies for women to thrive. In my mind, this is much of what we will be discussing throughout the next 2 days of the symposium, and there are 3 areas where I feel really need the most focused attention. The first is career progression. In Dakowitz's focus groups last year, this was a major topic of discussion among service members. While there are equal policies for parental leave, both male and female service members see how having a child presents unique obstacles towards women advancing in their career and promoting. Extended periods of leave can disrupt training, qualifications, and evaluation cycles, especially when compared to others who've not had those same periods of absence. I don't know the best or the right answer right now, but more needs to be done to ensure women and all parents are evaluated against their true peers so that people are not continually put in this bind where they feel they must have to choose between progressing their military careers and having a family. Another area is gear and equipment. While there's been progress made in this area, so much more needs to be done. And I will definitely let the experts on this topic speak during tomorrow's panel. But everyone benefits when women have gear that is properly formed and fitted for them, including the American taxpayer. Women need proper gear from the start of their military careers throughout the duration of their service. And specialized gear, including items such as the in-flight female bladder relief systems, must be a priority to ensure that women can fully focus on the mission and execute at their highest levels of performance. Which takes me into my last area that I think we need to work towards greater equity, which is health and performance. Again, others who are much smarter than me are going to address this later today and tomorrow, but to me this is another major area where the military and society also needs to focus. And the focus has to be not seeing women as a deviation or in deficit from men, but acknowledging our physiological differences as a neutral baseline fact and then working from there. Women in the military need policies and better resources that are tailored for women that take into account our hormones and our hormonal cycles, including menopause, our nutritional needs, and also our unique performance inhibitors and drivers. Addressing these areas and more will take innovation and new ways of doing things. And at times it's going to mean letting go of the old ways or the old policies, which we know can be very difficult for the military institution. Ultimately, our collective voices and our collective work in whatever way you contribute is so needed. And why should the military institution care about anything that I've just said? Because it needs women. Our military needs the talent, skills, output, perspective, and intellect of women. Recent research has shown that young women are increasingly more qualified for military service than young men. Women have many options of where to take their talent and skills in today's world. And we have to make sure that the military is a robust, complete, fulfilling, supportive opportunity and career option for women. It's absolutely imperative to our national security. Next slide. I want to thank you for your time and attention today. My email address is on this slide, and then for those in the room, please come find me if you'd like to connect more and talk. Thank you so much.